Welcome into another edition of SEC Football and Beyond. I'm Neil McCready, Chris Landry with me here as well. Hope you had a great weekend. Happy Tuesday. It's October the 13th into week 4 in the SEC. Week 3 was, as always, very interesting. A lot to get to. I've got a little humble pie to eat, and then I also have some interesting thoughts about a few teams that I think we have undersold over the course of the first 3 weeks of the year that are proving that perhaps they deserve a little bit more attention than we've been giving them. So we'll talk about some of those things and more. But first, Chris, how are you?
Neil, I am doing well, and so much to react to. Can't wait to see where you want to start. But one of the things that I kind of learned from you over the past, few weeks is I tend to rail for folks who are new to us and check us out on YouTube. And if you're listening to it on podcast, you can watch us live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch TV. But Neil's told me, and I've said, good Lord, there's overreaction every week, 1 week to the next. And Neil says, we wouldn't probably have jobs. There wouldn't be nearly as much interest if there wasn't. So it's like, it's just from one extreme to the other. So I get like from the same people that asked me about, I had one group, hey, Jimbo Fisher's are going to make it, whatever. Now the same people are saying, hey, one loss A&M, make it to the playoffs. Click. I mean, you talk about, now that's overdoing everything, Neil. But anyway, it's good to be with you. And we got some defensive coordinators that are not listening today because they're really busy and they're feeling a lot of heat. And it's conference wide.
Yeah, it's there's a lot to get to from this past week. I want to start with the game you just mentioned, Texas A&M. I'll hereby issue my formal apology. I thought watching them early in the season, first couple of weeks, I was convinced something was wrong. I didn't like their body language. I didn't like their lack of discipline. I didn't think they looked like much more than an average team. And for about a half on Saturday against Florida, I was like, son bitch, I'm right.
Well,
and then Chris, I think they found their identity. And it might, who knows, it might just be for one game. But they found their identity on Saturday, and they got more physical than Florida. They beat Florida at the line of scrimmage. They ran the football with authority. Florida did not like that. They were able to get after Kyle Trask a little bit. They were physical with those Florida receivers, and they turned the game around, and a huge win for Jimbo Fisher and the Aggies. And I'm not going to get into the playoff stuff yet because we're just in week 4.
Thank you.
It was
early.
Yeah, we're 3 weeks early on that at a minimum.
Yeah.
But I will give them credit for a big win that has the potential to change the tone of their season, and it has the potential to be one of those wins that you start to build a program on top of.
Yeah, and look, my thing is you weren't wrong with you, in my opinion, you weren't wrong with your assessment of what they are. The thing I always try to say is you're never the same. So it's about, okay, where do you go from here? And sometimes you get not rock bottom, but you get to the point where you're struggling to a level to where maybe it unearths some significant changes that don't necessarily take place when you have a little bit of an issue. You got a big rip in it. You tend to figure out, I'm gonna go to the doctor. It's a little bitty thing, and it just becomes infected. You don't pay attention to it. And all of a sudden you got a bigger problem down the road. And so the thing is I don't know. And with any of these teams, it's about you're only as good as your last game. So how do you improve? And I thought A&M showed a lot. I tell you, I had a coaching buddy of mine that said A&M will play well. And I thought A&M would play their best game, but I didn't think it would be enough. And look, they did it. Now, can they handle their business? Which, if you look at it, they have not lost a game to this point that they should have lost under Jimbo. So they are going to be favorite in every game the rest of the way. But let's see them build. Let's see them be consistent. They're games that are potentially dangerous to them, and let's see how they build upon it. But I do think that it exposed some issues on Florida's defense. And I think we're having a real problem on the defensive side in the league with some teams that are for different reasons, but yet there's some themes. So, look, it could be. It was a game that was kind of a Kellen Mond, Jimbo, a lot of heat, all the things. Hey, not going to get it done. It's this. Well, we still don't know what the future is, but we do know this, that they certainly had a really good week and obviously a good week of preparation according to the staff. And it was a big-time win. And is it going to be a turning point? Well, Neil, we may look back at it and say, you know what, that Florida game was the turning point. Or we may look back and say, what the hell happened because they beat Florida, and now look at me. We just don't know what the future holds.
Well, I thought early in the season they were putting too much on Kellen Mond. They were asking Kellen Mond to go be a superstar, and I don't think he's a superstar quarterback. They got away from that. They said, hey, let's be balanced. Let's run the football. We've got these good backs. Let's use them. Let's lean on them. Let's establish the running game. Let's be stubborn about it. And they dictated physicality at the line of scrimmage. They dictated tempo. They really just took the game away from Florida. And there was a point late second quarter where I thought Florida was about to put A&M away. I thought Florida was about to go on a run, and that was going to be that. They had a 2-score lead, and it looked like they were going to go in and make it 3. And it just kind of felt like, boy, this is going to be a tough one for Jimbo. And instead, he came off the field at the half saying, we've just got to get more disciplined. We've got to. I don't believe that you have enough time at halftime to change the tone of your program. But I think he very clearly said, hey, look, we can't get out here and beat ourselves. And we're going to lean on what we do and let the chips fall. And he emphasized that we're going to quit watching the scoreboard. We're going to play the game. We'll let the scoreboard dictate itself at the end of the game. And I thought for them, that team, for the first time this season, kind of took on some of Jimbo's personality. And I think that's important for teams. You have to have the personality of your coach, or else there's this disconnect. And that disconnect always sort of shows over the course of difficult games. So I thought it was a big win for them. It's gonna be a common theme. Florida's defense now, Ole Miss lit them up. Ole Miss's defense was so bad that it got covered up by what Florida did offensively that day in Oxford. But Florida is having a difficult time stopping anybody. South Carolina had some success, and then obviously you saw what A&M was able to do. There's a recipe now for how to cook gator. You know what I mean? There's a recipe for how to beat them, and it's something that they've got to go address, and they've got to fix it. Otherwise, this is going to repeat itself a few more times. They still have some difficult games on their schedule.
Oh, there's no question that they do. And I'm looking here at my defensive grades on them. Look, there are a few things, and how do you fix it? And there is a personnel issue. There are guys that they're replaced that are not as good and not as experienced. They're not getting. Look, they can't rush the passer, and they can't cover quite as well as you need to bring extra pressure. They're going to have to take some chances. Todd Grantham loves to do that, but trusting the back end is a problem. And look, there's the big key to the game. And, you kind of mentioned Jimbo and talking about his identity. What Jimbo likes to do more than anything is run the football. He's great with quarterbacks, but it's running the football, establishing the run. The game was ultimately won by A&M's offensive line play against Florida's defensive front. Now, a lot of that has to do, and I mentioned it, tweeted out, and Gator fans weren't real happy with it, but South Carolina was running the football on Florida until they had to stop. Florida's defensive front is having a hard time getting off blocks. They're really doing a poor job with their run fits. So when they're running a twist or they're trying to bring extra pressure, they're not fitting the run, folks. That is, if you vacate the A-gap, the backside A-gap, you've got to have somebody come into that gap. It's like plugging a hole in the dam. Well, if you don't do it, it's like having a hole in a bucket with a bunch of water. If you don't put the cork, you may put the cork in one hole, but you got water coming out the other. You've got to fit your gaps. And they're struggling with that. So they're struggling with assignment football that's with youth. They're struggling with the ability to execute some of the things that they normally like to do. So they simplified things to make it easier. Hey, make it simple, right? Hey, simple. That's great. Yeah, you got to go back, make it simple. There's a problem with that too. When you make it simple, you become easier to identify and easier to attack, particularly against some offenses and some good quarterback play. And I agree, Kellen Mond hadn't been real effective, but when you run the football, control the line of scrimmage, you have some easy throws. You can stay on the field longer. You know, you wear people down, and that's what people are doing to Florida. And so it's a great win for A&M. What does it tell us? It tells us something about A&M, and it tells us something about Florida. Now what? Now let's see where both go from here. And there's every belief in my mind that I think Florida's defense can improve. Can it improve enough to become what they normally have? No, I don't think that's happening. I don't think this is going to be the defense of last year or previous years, but I think it can get better. And reps will help that get better to a point. But they got a real problem there. And, Todd Granham's under a lot of heat. We're going to talk about some other defense coordinators under a lot of heat in the SEC, but
ready to get to
it's
one.
A big issue.
Yeah, so let's talk about that one. Missouri and LSU, that game was rescheduled, moved to Columbia, Missouri from Baton Rouge because of Hurricane Delta. If you're listening down in South Louisiana, I hope you came out of the hurricane well. You certainly in our thoughts and prayers. Bo Pelini needs to be in our thoughts and prayers a little bit as well. Missouri lit them up, Chris. 45-41. Missouri gets the win over LSU. I don't know. Let's start here before we talk about LSU's obvious defensive issues that have now popped up twice in 3 weeks. Big win for Elijah Drinkwitz and Missouri, a game that pours energy straight into the veins of that program. Gives their fans something to get excited about, gives their kids something to get excited about. Missouri's game against Vanderbilt this weekend postponed because of COVID-related issues. They have so Elijah Drinkwitz said, hey, we're going to spend this week working on us. He's going to have his kids' attention this week because now he can say, see, it works. We're working good. The young quarterback from Missouri I thought was terrific, made some big throws. They were fun to watch. They took it to LSU offensively against LSU's defense. So big win for the Tigers, the Missouri Tigers, but that has to be a very concerning loss, Chris, for LSU when you look at what they looked like on the defensive end, the teams that are still left on their schedule who can really throw and catch. It's something that Pelini's got to get fixed, or they're staring a win-loss record in the face that I don't know that people in Baton Rouge thought was realistic.
No, and there's going to be some internal changes how they do things and some personnel, but to lose to Missouri, with all due respect, quickly on them, it is a great win. And as a coach, when you try to impart, this is what we do and why we want to do it, it's sometimes it's a hard sell until you win. Well, when you sell, okay, I see it now, coach. There's buy-in.
Yep.
Offense is playing well and doing a really good job, and you see a lot of the formation variations, some of the pre-snap movements, getting guys open. They did a really good job with it, and causing some miscommunication that only exposed LSU's defense even further. But there is also the big story of the game is the fact that it is LSU. You've got a Mississippi State team, which we'll get into in a second, that torched LSU. And that offense hasn't done anything since LSU's left the field for a couple of games now. And LSU's still having a lot of communication issues in the secondary. They don't have good pass rush. They're not as talented, and they're not as well coached. Bo Pelini, his defense looks confused. They look enthused. I mentioned, and we've talked about it on LandryFootball.com all summer, there's a lot of defensive guys that were turned off when Bo Pelini came in. Bo Pelini came in very high-strung, command the room. I'm here. this is my defense. This is what we're going to do. And yet last year's team was built around a great offense. But there are a lot of defensive guys, and let's remind folks that when it mattered against Georgia, when it mattered most against Clemson, that defense played good situational defense, and Dave Aranda had a calming influence. Well, Bo Pelini's anything but calming. And Dave Aranda, when the offense is so good and they had all those injuries, he didn't sit there. He said, I'm going to do, and I'm going to be a chameleon, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to win. Bo Pelini is very much a lot like Ed Orgeron. So there's a they used to be the Ram Tough commercial with the two Rams button heads. So what you're dealing with now when Bo Pelini came in, there are guys that on that defense that were part of a championship team. They're basically told, hey, the way you did what you did last year didn't work. It wasn't good enough, and this is what we're going to do. The head coach said, this defense in the early fall, this defense is already better, Ed Orgeron said, than any time last year. Now, that's why Ed's not great X's and O guy. He emotionally feels things, and what we're seeing is a defense that they're trying to run what Bo wants, and Bo can't get it across. And I don't know if there's not buy-in or if there is just a combination of that or frustration because they can't play man. They're trying to play some zone. That's not working well. There are guys running free, Neil, that you and I could have scored on against LSU because it was made pretty easy. So they've given up over 1,200 yards against two teams that are not Florida. They're not Ole Miss. They're not Auburn. All due respect, they're Mississippi State, who hasn't busted a grape against anybody but LSU, and a Missouri team, give them credit, but I'm not ready to make them juggernauts of offensive football, and they have annihilated this LSU defense. So, yeah, they're major problems.
Yeah, they got Florida this weekend, a Florida team coming off a loss. Dan Mullen's his team will be ready, and Kyle Trask and that Gator receiving core is something that LSU hasn't seen yet. They've got a hell of an –
And real quick, on the offensive side of the ball, a lot of points, 0 for 10 on third downs. And what was that on the goal line at the end? Oh, my God.
What was that at the goal line at the end? With the chance to salvage the game, win the game, come home and go, well, it was really bad and there's a lot to work on, but we did win. Instead, first and goal at the 1, and they come away with nothing.
Nothing. And remember, Bo Pelini, and I know that's the issue in the talk, but Scott Linehan was brought as the pass game coordinator, but his official responsibility was handling third down and red zone. That's not good. They are not as talented, and they're not as well coached. And again, people say, well, Ed needs to fix it. Here's the issue. We're not talking about a great X's and O guy. So the only guys that can fix it are his guys. So Ed can do fire and brimstone speeches, but Ed don't know how to go and fix the offense. And he doesn't even know how to go and fix the defense because he's a D-line coach that can't put fronts and coverages together. He can go in as the head coach and say, we need to fix it, but he doesn't know how to help them fix it because coaching the coaches is not what he does. He's a recruiter, and this is not – you can't fix your football team during the season with recruiting that's fixing the future. So, look, I think they'll get better, but they've already lost 2 games that there's no way, even with the transition that I thought would be 2 games that they'd lose. I thought those were 2 wins.
Yeah, I did too. And like I said, if you're 0-2, I mean, you're 1-2 at this point, and you're LSU. It's a little scary right now. This thing could get squirrely because the rest of the league is a little in spots. We're about to get to a few of those teams. The rest of the league a little bit better in some spots than perhaps everybody thinks it is. So I'm missing South Carolina and Vanderbilt was the other early game. I don't really have a whole lot to say about that. Vanderbilt has monumental issues. They've now lost 41-7 back-to-back to LSU and South Carolina. They've got COVID issues that have caused this game this weekend to get postponed.
Vanderbilt looked like they had 57 players in the
Yeah.
game.
Yeah.
That's it. That's what it looked like. South Carolina dominated, and watching it, it was not much that you can make out of that win. It's a bad team that's getting worse. Vanderbilt's the worst team.
Will Muschamp got what he needed, got a win, got out of it, avoided any kind of a disaster. I think they got out of there pretty healthy, and they have a huge one this weekend that we'll talk about in a little bit. Auburn going to Columbia to play the Gamecocks. We'll get to that one in a little bit. The CBS game of the week last week, Chris, Georgia and Tennessee, and for one half, it looked like we were going to have an absolute showdown, and in the second half, Georgia looked like a national championship team. Georgia just dominated the final 30 minutes of that game and looked, at least to my eye, and by then I was a little distracted. There was other games going on. Our pregame show was going on, so I wasn't like locked in. But what I did see in the second half looked like a dominant performance by the Bulldogs.
Well, it was, and look, I mean, we talked about it last week. This one really kind of went a lot like I thought. It's Georgia puts teams away in the second half when they're a superior team, and this is the case. It takes a little while. I thought there was a really good game plan for Tennessee offensively in the first half. Garantano played well, was 11 for 13, and 2 big-time throws, and Georgia was in coverage. Coverage was good. They were in phase. The play on the ball was poor, and then Georgia gave Tennessee 7 points at the beginning. That was so you can't do that. That gives you a problem. But then, so what it did, it delayed the butt whipping. Tennessee's offensive line was manhandled in this game. That was the story. No, Garantano's, they need a better answer at quarterback. And I know that they're working the young quarterback in scrimmage. They had a 49-play scrimmage on Sunday. They played the youngster, not Jared Garantano, in the scrimmage. We'll see if they go going forward with that. But the bottom line,
scrimmage the day after the game.
Yes, yeah, with the young guys, basically a lot of the young guys. So the issue, Tennessee's just not where Georgia is. They are going to want to build a program like Georgia, like Kirby has. They're at a different level. And I think, again, and I don't want to be critical of it, but when people react, okay, that's good. Beat Missouri, they look good. They beat South Carolina. They're ready for Georgia. No, you're not. You're not ready for Georgia. Georgia's on a different level, and I get it. First half was great. That's the whole point, is over 4 quarters, you don't see Georgia explode on people. This is not Ole Miss's offense. This is not Alabama's offense. This is not Florida's offense. This is Georgia's offense. Run it. They're going to be physical, and if they make mistakes and give away points or field position, you're going to be in the game. Good luck holding up to their physicality for 4 quarters, and there's certainly nobody in the East that is really capable of doing that. And they kind of just control the game in the second half, and that's what it was. So it really was the game that I thought it would be, even to the point where I thought the game could be a game into the third quarter, and it was, until it wasn't. And then that's kind of how I thought it happened.
They did to Tennessee what they did to Arkansas in week 1.
Yeah.
Just when they hit the switch, look out. And they hit it, and they were really good. Georgia and Alabama this weekend, obviously it's the game, not just in the league, but the game in the country. We'll talk a lot about it. We'll talk about it a little bit later in this show, and we'll talk about it a ton on Friday. Still got a few more I want to get your thoughts on, because there were some really interesting games in the afternoon and evening as well. Auburn beats, in air quotes, Arkansas.
Yeah, air quotes.
30-28. I want to start here. A lot of credit goes to Sam Pittman and the coaching staff at Arkansas. Chris, when I started on the Ole Miss beat back in 2008, which is hard for me to believe because I never would have thought I'd still be covering Ole Miss at this point, but when I started on the beat, Ole Miss, Houston Nutt had just been hired. He brought in a whole new staff, and he inherited a lot of talent that Ed Orgeron had left behind, but they had not won. They didn't know how to win. They were kind of beaten down. They didn't have confidence. They didn't believe in themselves. They didn't really know how to work. They didn't know a lot. And Houston Nutt, to his credit, and I've been very critical of his tenure at Ole Miss, but that first year, Houston Nutt did a fantastic job with that team in between their ears, getting them to believe, getting them to play. And by the end of that 2008 season, Ole Miss was a very good club, one of the better clubs in the country. I'm not saying Arkansas is going to be that. They don't have the talent to be that. But you got to give Sam Pittman and Kendall Briles and Barry Odom and that staff a lot of credit for the way those kids are playing, as hard as they're playing. Down 17-0 to Auburn, it would have been easy on that Arkansas sideline in the rain at Jordan-Hare to say, well, we've done this before. It'll be all right. And roll over and get beat 34-7 or something, which is what they've done in the past. Instead, they come storming back, take a 28-27 lead, and quite frankly, should have won the ball game. I mean, that was a blown call there at the end that cost them a chance to win the game. We'll start with Arkansas. What is it that they're doing on both sides of the ball that is making them so much more competitive this year than they've been in previous seasons?
Well, first of all, no one's gotten more out of their team in the SEC thus far than Sam. And I think it is attitude. I think that they've done some really good jobs schematically. I think they've really worked on the physical part. They've worked on trying to get defenses off balance a little bit. I think they've done a good job getting the quarterback outside the pocket. I think they've done a really good job getting a lot out of the Felipe Franks. And then I think where I think the biggest improvement's just, how they play defensively, how they get lined up, how they pattern match. And they're limited, but they do a good job playing zone. They do a good job of siphoning off guys, playing help defense. They're really solid. You got to go and beat them. I mean, bad teams are bad for a number of reasons. They're bad because they may not be talented. But oftentimes you look at a team and they say, oh, they're just bad. They've got no talent. I see teams that are really bad, poor, talented teams. But if you play smart fundamental football, you can get out of whatever that team has. You can get more out of it and just say, oh, they're just awful. There's some that they need guys that can go out and play and just, Katie bar the door and go attack. But what you're seeing now is the ability, I think, to schematically and from fundamental positioning play as good a defense as you can. Can they match up very well against, different types? No, but they can do a good job taking away what you do. And if you are one-dimensional, Mississippi State, they can make you pay. Auburn, they got back in the game against Auburn because Auburn wasn't able to adjust. So it's definitely coaching, and it's about coaching up the individual players to believe. It's coaching up schematically to make things accentuate what they can do well and take away what is not your strength and what is your opponent's strength. Make your opponent play left-handed. That's what I'm seeing. And, look, I don't expect the same success or result when they play A&M. I think it's going to be tough for them defensively against Ole Miss. It's different. Tennessee, Florida, Alabama. You're going to see Arkansas, go back to, all right, well, everybody, again, who they've played, they've been able to manage it. But at the beginning of the year, people were saying, okay, they're maybe the worst team of the league, one of them. Well, they've shown an ability against Mississippi State and against Auburn and for first half against Georgia, against a really elite team, that they can play. So I again, kudos to that staff and Coach Pittman for changing the attitude and for the assistants changing the schematics. The coordinator hires have been stellar thus far, both sides of the ball.
They get Ole Miss at home, 2:30 on Saturday. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Still got to get to Ole Miss's game against Alabama, which might have been the most offensively entertaining game that we'll see in a long time. For Auburn on their side, any concern when
Yeah.
Felipe Franks throws for 4 touchdowns? That's not an explosive Arkansas offense, and they put up 28, and Auburn's not able to run the football the way that Auburn has always run the football. They're good in the passing game, but they're not great, and defensively they're not what they were kind of promised to be. They've had some injuries at linebacker, and it shows.
No, I've definitely got concerns. It's definitely a problem, and there's definitely a lot of frustration on the Plains because, defensively is what they're hanging their hat on. And that's what they've been able to do. Kevin's lost a lot of players. He's trying to get a lot of young guys in position. You just mentioned injuries at linebacker. That's really tough because that's your tone setters and your formation setters, and they're struggling there. So speaking of hitting the wrong gaps and guys that are not nearly the playmakers they've had in the past, it's a problem. The secondary's got some issues. Defensively, they're not that good. Can they get better? To a certain point, I think they will, but this is going to be an issue. And that just becomes a bigger problem when you can't run the football. The offensive line's not playing well. And yes, they can throw it pretty well. And I see some positives with the pass game. But the issue is you've got to be able to make plays. You've got to be able to run the football and make plays in the passing game off of that. And it's become reversed. It's like the only thing that they can do pretty well, they'll throw it a little bit, but then that's not sustainable, and they can't take advantage of it. So what they've got to be able to do is work the pass game to get back to the run game. And if they can't do that, they're going to have real problems, and they're going to get exposed. And we do have a lot of mediocrity in the West, it looks right now, beyond Alabama, and even Alabama's got some issues that we'll get to. But who knows what the heck's going to happen in the West? I mean, you throw in Auburn, you throw in LSU, A&M. I know it's I would throw them in the mix and maybe even put A&M above Auburn, LSU. I think it's fair at this point. But I think Auburn. It's going to be interesting to see. Gus has rebounded, and everyone thinks and looks that, this is going to be one of those. It's finally going to be like a 5-win season. Probably not. They're probably going to end up a little bit better. Just won't be quite. I don't think the rebound won't be quite as good this year.
I'm really interested in their next 2 games, South Carolina and Ole Miss. Those are games they can win. Those are games they can lose. And if they lose 1 or 2 of those, it gets squirrely over there pretty quick. Speaking of Ole Miss and Alabama, with 11 minutes to go, Chris, it was 42-42.
Yep.
It was 49-42. Ole Miss had a bad snap. If you watch the film on that one, and Lane Kiffin talked about it yesterday, if they get the snap right, they've got a wide open touchdown. They had Alabama in a bad look. Kenny Yeboah was going to be open for a score. It's going to be 49-49. As it was, Alabama wins 63-48. Ole Miss rolls up 640 some odd yards of offense. Alabama gets an incredible, astonishing 723 yards of total offense. Mac Jones was terrific. Najee Harris was terrific. Matt Corral was terrific. Jerry and Ely ran for 120. Snoop Connor ran for 128. If you like offense, you walked out of that thing really satisfied. If you like defense, you walked out of there incredibly frustrated. Ole Miss could not stop Alabama. And here's the truth. And here's the scary part for Alabama. They couldn't stop Ole Miss. If you look at the drives when Ole Miss didn't score, Ole Miss stopped itself. 2 bad snaps killed 2 drives. And otherwise, Chris, that thing's getting in the final 5 minutes with the game on the line.
Yeah, no, it was I knew Alabama would give up some yards and some points to Ole Miss. I didn't think it would be the tennis match that it was, where it was that no one can break serve, and it was just whoever had the ball, they were scoring. And I think it kind of worked its way in there for a couple of things. First of all, on Alabama, and I'm going to focus on the defenses because I do think the offenses are outstanding on both sides, and I think they deserve a lot of credit. And when you're talking about the defenses, keep in mind that they're going up against these offenses that are so good that it's going to expose and exploit it. So for Alabama. The tempo killed them. I mean, the tempo getting to the line of scrimmage that Ole Miss had, Lane knows that's what really causes Alabama problems. He took advantage of that, of getting to the line of scrimmage, not allowing Alabama to be able to check, adjust. They were slow doing it, and as a result, yeah, there were guys running free in the run game because guys weren't even lined up correctly and they couldn't make adjustments. Well, that's what you do in the fast-paced game. If you don't like it, and a lot of the defensive guys don't like it because a lot of the rules today are by standard of rules, or the RPO stuff is a lot of illegal blocking downfield. It's accepted as part of today's game. You've got to be able to adjust it. So they were not able during the course of the game to be able to get lined up and deal with the pace. And then the lack of communication due to the quickness. You don't have enough time to communicate it. And therefore you get just beat to a pulp. And now you're on the field. Then it becomes again, a tennis match, a race car situation. I mean, it's just zoom, zoom, zoom. So now, like it has become for Alabama in the past, get out there, go score offense. Our best chance to go and score, and Ole Miss's defense, more on them in a second, then it's a quick score. Well, the worst thing, and I thought there were some times where Alabama could control the ball a little bit, but Ole Miss defense is so bad, even the run game was explosive. And so the worst thing that you could do in that moment is to have a quick score if you're Alabama. Look, you take it when you can get it. But ideally, you like to have a slow bleed, a slow score to where you can give your defense a chance. This defense was gashed, and it just got perpetually worse because the more you're on the field, more snaps, and the shorter intervals between series just made it a disaster. And at a certain point, there was really no chance that defense would, come up with a stop, which they did, and mistakes, yes. Well, that's what happens in a game like that. Somebody drops a ball. Somebody misses an open receiver. Somebody drops a pass. Somebody misses a block and gets hit on a sack. And then all of a sudden, it's a tennis match. Hey, so-and-so finally broke serve, and there you go. That's it. That's the game. And that was it. Once Ole Miss kicked the field goal, you pretty much, that was it, because you knew that defensively they weren't going to get a stop, more than likely, or, hope that maybe Alabama makes a mistake. But so Alabama's – yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Let me go here with Ole Miss, because we're going to talk a lot about Alabama throughout the rest of this week with this huge game against Georgia coming up. For Ole Miss, obviously, they need to revamp the talent on that side of the ball. There's nothing that DJ Durkin and Chris Partridge can go do from a talent standpoint, though, until after the season. Is there anything that you see that they could do schematically, personnel-wise, to button it up a little bit? Some of the Ole Miss players have talked about not completely trusting each other, not completely understanding the system, trying to do too much, not just mind your assignment, play your assignment, trust your teammate to play his assignment. Is it that simple? You're looking at this. What can you do? You're not going to make Ole Miss an elite defense. That's not going to happen this year. Is there anything you can do at this point to make them a serviceable defense so that they can win some of the games they have coming up, which are, frankly, some interesting contests here in the next few weeks? You got you got Arkansas, followed by Auburn, followed by Vanderbilt, followed by South Carolina. I'm not saying Ole Miss is going to win all four of those games, Chris, but with a solid defensive effort, they certainly could win a few of them.
Yes, they can do some things. The talent is an issue, and you're correct, it can't be fixed. But they don't play smart on defense either. I mean, they're not playing well. And I think that, and by not being smart, they're not executing very well at all. They don't set the edge at all in the run game. They get caught out of position more than anybody. It's talk about Florida, talk about I'm not talking about talent now. Okay, forget talent. Talking about assignment football, they're the worst. They're of the bunch that we're talking about. They're the worst.
Yeah,
they're the worst at late with their run fits. missing with their run fits. We can't get good pressure up front. We can't get good penetration. We can't get off blocks. We'll run a stunt. We'll take an angle. Well, then you got to fit it right. You've got to. Defense is about gap responsibility. The gap between the center right guard's a gap. The gap between the center left guard. The gap between the guard tackle. I'm not going to go through all of it. Everyone's a gap. You have to have somebody in the gap. The bucket with the water in it, you got to plug up. You got to be there. You got to be where you're supposed to be. If you're where you're supposed to be and you're physically beaten, there's nothing you can do about being physically beaten. Okay, if you're not where you're supposed to be, you can spill it in. Set the edge to the run game. Spill the run inside so that you can play to your help. They don't do that very well. And so the reason why it's worse is because, A, they're not doing it well, and they're not very talented, so they can't go and say, somebody go make a play. They don't have enough guys that can go and make a play. So what it is the lack of fundamental part of defense is affecting. Now, I'd like to say this real quickly, and that's hard for me, I know. But defensive football overall, with a few exceptions, is bad. And a lot of it has to do, you can't really run a lot of the 9-on-7 stuff. You can't run inside drill. Everybody's struggling defensively getting lined up, and everybody's struggling tackling. And it's the byproduct of that hurts you more in a COVID offseason than the offense and the passing game and all that. You can get some work done. You can't do this. You can't take on blocks. You can't set the edge. You can't do those things unless you do it and you work the physical part, and we haven't done enough of that overall. Georgia's got a lot of returning guys. They're immensely talented. They focus on it. Therefore, they're really good. Clemson's got talent. They're starting to get better. There's some teams that are playing better defense than others, but nobody other than Georgia's playing great defense. But what you're seeing is that combined with the normal process of the modern day football, which is allowing blocking downfield where you run blocking, but then you pop a pass. Well, that is stuff that's going to always cause problems for defenses, and why even defensive coaches are saying, well, hell, we're going to have to do it too, because, it's something we got to take advantage of. And all the rules are favoring the offenses. So all of that in a pot is leading to stinko defensive football, even in the NFL level in most cases.
Now, Mississippi State and Kentucky would probably take offense to what you just said. They actually both played okay on defense Saturday night. Kentucky was pretty good on the defensive side, picking off Mississippi State 6 times. Kentucky wins 24-2. Nice win for the Wildcats after disappointing losses to Auburn and Ole Miss. A really bad look for Mississippi State. After the game, Mike Leach talks about processing people, about purging people. He's 3 weeks in, Chris. You look around the SEC at the new coaches, right? You look around, Lane Kiffin's got Ole Miss's offense playing at a super elite level. They're recruiting really well right now. A lot of energy and excitement around their program. We talked about Sam Pittman and what they've been able to do at Arkansas, completely changing the culture in 3 games. Arkansas looks like a program that is maybe a slow rise, but a rise nonetheless. And we just talked about Elijah Drinkwitz at Missouri getting a really big win for that program against LSU at home on this past Saturday. Mississippi State beat LSU, and since then, it's been ugly.
Yeah, and look, I don't. It doesn't surprise me at all. We talked about it. We were talking about it after the LSU game. That okay, yeah, this happens, but didn't we, talk about look out, because this is what's coming in the future. Now, I didn't necessarily expect it against Arkansas, but I expected it coming. Look, Kentucky didn't do anything special on defense. When you don't want to run the football, you can't run the football, and you make no adjustments, you've got basically 2 run plays. It's pretty easy to play defense there. Now, I know LSU didn't do it. because you didn't know how to play it, and it's not difficult. I said it after the LSU game. This is more about what LSU didn't do. You saw Arkansas and Kentucky shut them out. That's only the second time a Mike Leach coach team has ever gone through a game without a touchdown. I think it was 17 in Cal. It happened. Think about that.
Yeah.
It's just there's no ability to – and, oh, by the way, throwing his kids under the bus, that ain't new either. I said that. That's what he does all the time. The fat little girlfriends, all the things. That's what he does. And here's why he does it. Because it's not Mike Leach's fault. The win against LSU, that's Mike Leach. But the losses, no. This ain't on me. This is on the kids.
Yeah.
This is not a bad Mississippi State team. It's got some talent. It's got some talent on defense, and they're hanging in there. But they don't help the defense out running the football because it's not what Mike knows, and it's not what makes Mike the genius that he likes to purport himself to be. This is Mike Leach. I said after 2 weeks, you had the full Mike Leach experience. No, now after 3 weeks, we have the full, because not only do you have the on-field, but you got in the press conference the full Mike Leach. You got it all now. You're just going to see more of it, and you're going to see him upset somebody again because somebody's not going to figure out how to play it, and they're going to beat that person. But he's been exposed everywhere he's been, but it is, like I said, Mike is a media darling that gets credit for the success, but never is called out for what he has because he's not been at places that typically would win. This might be an absolute disaster at a big-time program. At Mississippi State, though, it may not be a big-time program, but it has a program that has expectations as in a big-time league, and you can't get away with, they laugh off the ugly little girlfriend stuff in Lubbock and in Pullman. Actually, they don't laugh it off, but nobody really cares because it's not on a national map. But when you do that in Starkville, it's in the SEC, and it's become a big factor.
There's only one program in the SEC you could do that at, and that's Vanderbilt, and it wouldn't last very long there either. The other programs, every other program in the league takes itself more seriously than that. And it's one of those things that you only hear from Mike when they lose because this is why. Here's the problem. Let me point it out. Well, that's going to, and again, I don't know, you follow this more than I do, what media people and all talk about, but there may be some media folks that may take up for him in Starkville that says, you know what, it's a culture problem that was left over, but at some point that's going to die off. They will for now. It won't last forever because a lot of that media at Mississippi State are such fans that their feelings are going to get hurt. You always tell coaches, hey, be careful now with homers. Because homers, when it's going good, they're your best friend. But make no mistake, when it starts going bad, they are the first ones to turn on you every single time. And that beats full of them. Hey, before we get into we'll just touch real quick the games coming up this weekend. It includes Mississippi State playing host to Texas A&M. Let me tell you that we're brought to you by Jupiter Security Systems. Based in Madison, Mississippi, Jupiter Security Systems provides your business, with the help desk, allowing you to get software at a much cheaper price than you would pay going directly to Microsoft or the different cybersecurity services. Jupiter offers businesses the full Microsoft 365 suite, email, spam protection, and they monitor your workstations and servers. Jupiter doesn't see your data, but they'll know if malicious applications get installed on your computers. Jupiter Security Systems offers cybersecurity and monitoring. It's ADT for your computer systems and data. It's very affordable, flat price, no hidden add-ons. You can learn more by getting in touch with Eric at 601-519-9583 or email info at jupitersecurity.net. Obviously, the website, jupitersecurity.net. Also brought to you by Blue Sky. They believe in being fast, fresh, and friendly. From services to products, Blue Sky plans to keep things fresh and always provide the freshest flavors of their brand name products and the best services available. They even bring in some of the newest products on the market to their stores to provide an even better customer experience. Blue Sky wants to show their customers they care about them and their shopping experience, and they will always strive to improve their efforts to accomplish exactly that. So check out Blue Sky today at any one of their 48 store locations around the Southeast. All right, Chris, let's touch on the games coming up this week. Kind of have an interesting slate. Just get your quick early thoughts, and we'll dive into these on Friday. Kentucky is at Tennessee. That game is a noon Eastern, 11 Central start. For those of you out there that are like me, that are a little degenerate with betting lines, Kentucky, as of right now, is 6.5-point underdog in Knoxville.
Well, see, it'd be interesting to see how Tennessee responds. I think the offensive line will respond. I think they obviously saw that they, again, no matchup for Georgia, but this Kentucky team has not played lights out. This will be tough. They've got to lick their wounds, get back, and start to establish themselves, because a loss like here really kind of sends them in, not to a complete tailspin, but very negative vibes.
Auburn and South Carolina, they get together this weekend in Columbia, South Carolina. That game is at noon Eastern, 11 Central. You can see it on ESPN. As of late yesterday, Chris, Auburn a 3-point favorite there at Williams-Brice, and a big game for both teams, a big opportunity for South Carolina.
Look, we saw it last week with Auburn. They better watch it. South Carolina will fight. They'll play hard, and Auburn better play better. This is not getting more and more frustrated. The annual Gus has got to go talk is just, and it's a lot of – this is just a game you can't lose if you're Gus. And it is losable if they play the way they have, and I think we saw that last week. South Carolina will play hard. I know that.
LSU heads to Florida. The Gators 10th ranked in the country after their loss to Texas A&M. This game at 3:30 Eastern, 2:30 Central. You can catch it on ESPN. The line on this, no one would have seen this coming before the season. Florida, a 13.5-point favorite going into this game at the Swamp on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, even with some corrections, this Florida offense, you said it earlier, they'll get back on track. I mean, the offense is still good. It's still very effective. They'll be effective this week. LSU's actually third down, some red zone issues notwithstanding. I just think this is going to be a game in which, while LSU may be able to move the football, I don't think they'll be able to match points with Florida. This is going to be tough. Florida is going to be angry, embarrassed, so they're going to have their full attention. Gators losing this at home would be tough. I think right now there's a lot of soul searching at LSU. So you're getting a emotionally wounded LSU team that I don't know that can get back on track. I think you're getting an angry Florida team.
I tend to agree. I like the Gators in that one, even though that line is huge. Ole Miss and Arkansas kick off at the same time, 2:30 Central. That game in Fayetteville, Arkansas, there at Reynolds Razorback Stadium. Ole Miss, a 3-point favorite. You can see that game on ESPN2.
Yeah, we've talked about Arkansas a lot today and the job that they've done. It's just going to be quite the challenge to slow down this Ole Miss offense enough, regardless who you are. And I think that's going to be the issue. And, what Ole Miss has to do is to help their defense to get that lead, get some points, and to maybe make an opponent one-dimensional. So I'm curious to see how this game starts, how quick the points come off the board, and then how Arkansas is going to play it, because I think they're going to give up some points. But can they stay within, a one-possession game, no more than a 2-possession game, and certainly in the third quarter, it's got to be a 1-possession game. If they can, game on, but just holding down the explosiveness of this Ole Miss offense, I think, outside of Georgia, I don't know that anybody in the conference can do it. I really don't. But you can. Arkansas can run the football.
Yeah, that's going to be what they're going to try.
Possessions. That's what you do.
Yeah,
that's what you do. That's what you do against them. And you can't maybe stop them, but you can stop them from getting the ball as much as possible.
It's a basketball game between one team that wants to go, and another team that wants to use shot clock. And, and who can control tempo is going to win. Texas A&M at Mississippi State. This is a 3 p.m. start on the SEC network. The game in Starkville. Texas A&M, as of late yesterday, Chris, a 6.5-point favorite on the road.
Yeah, again, defending Mississippi State is about knowing what they do and how they do it. I think Mike Elko will have a good plan. Even if you're not very familiar with it, now you've got this Mississippi State offense on film. I think that, again, for all the criticism, I haven't seen to this point Jimbo lose a game in which he had the better team. I think he's got the better team here. And let's see what happens. Can you handle prosperity? You won a game. Kellen Mond, can you come back and play well, move the football, run the football? I mean, that's the key. I think A&M's the better team here. We'll see him break down more of what Elko needs to do.
Vanderbilt and Missouri were scheduled to play at 6:30 on the SEC network. That game has been postponed, I should say, because of COVID-19 issues within the Vanderbilt program. I don't know when they're planning to replay that. I've heard December 12th is kind of the goal there, but we'll see. I don't even know if that game will ultimately be played. It won't have any championship ramifications, that's for sure, so I don't know how that will work. And then finally, the big one, third-ranked Georgia at number 2, Alabama. This game, a 7 p.m. start, prime time on CBS. It's the one everyone has pointed to. The winner of this, obviously, in the driver's seat for a college football playoff spot. The loser probably in pretty good shape as well. As of late yesterday, Chris, Georgia, a 4.5-point underdog in Tuscaloosa.
Well, obviously this game kind of sets up as the storyline, right? Pretty easy. You've got an Alabama offense that's as good as any. I mean, you've got explosive offenses, but of the explosive offenses, this offensive line is as good as you're going to get. And they've got a power run element and a running back that's running his heart. And there's some good backs. I was looking up my film grades on running back. There's some good running backs. No one's running better than Najee Harris.
And that receiver at Alabama is really good.
Oh, yeah. And I was getting – and the quarterback is outstanding. Okay, so all the talk about when's Bryce Young going to get in – not for a while, my man. Put that on the side. Have a package. Get him ready if Mac has to go down. You better be ready because he's the starting quarterback. Your starter goes down and he plays. Mac Jones is the guy, and he is not just managing things. He is managing the game well, but he is making big-time throws.
If Mac Jones were nothing more than a game manager, Alabama loses on Saturday.
He's matching points with anybody. Now, here's the thing. This is a completely different game, Bama fans, than what you had last week. You're not going to face a Georgia offense that's as explosive or likes to do the same things tempo-wise at Ole Miss. So your defense is not going to look like it did against Ole Miss. You're going to have time to make checks. Georgia's going to huddle. You got to defend the run. They're going to try to force the ball outside the numbers. Force Stetson Bennett to throw it outside the numbers and have Georgia beat you there. And then defensively, you've for Georgia, you've got a great defense, but you've got to match up against all the weaponry and all the balance that this Alabama offense has. So look, this Alabama offense, you can make the case, is playing as good as anybody in the country. This Georgia defense is playing better than anybody in the country. So something's got to give. Who's going to be able to get their side of the ball corrected? And I do know that, again, Georgia will have some opportunities to move the football against Alabama, and Alabama's defense won't look as bad. So it's not going to look like it did last week. It's stylistically going to be different. I think it ought to be a really good game. We're going to get into more on Thursday. We'll break it down more and give you a pick on Thursday. I'm doing a lot of film work. Check it out at LandryFootball.com, film grades. We're going to get down into the strategy because this is – and Neil, though, I don't think this is the most important game these two teams are playing all year. It's the most important to date. These two teams are going to be playing the SEC championship game, and that game is going to be most important because the winner of that game is going to determine – more than even this. That might be the same team that wins Saturday, but just something to keep in mind. And I'm not going to throw out the possibility or dismiss the possibility this couldn't be one of 3 times they play. But I think it's pretty sure it's going to be one of 2. I might be wrong, but that's what I think.
I tend to think you're right. All right, we'll wrap there. We'll come back later this week. We'll preview all those games, dive into detail on all of those, especially the big one in Tuscaloosa. For Chris Landry, I'm Neil McCready. That does it for this episode of SEC Football and Beyond. Have a great week. We'll talk to you a little later.